Hey guys, welcome back to Alex Goes Coconuts. Today is actually my son's birthday, and tomorrow we're hosting a whole bunch of his friends. They're going to be playing video games and we're going to be ordering pizza. And my son actually requested his favorite cake for his birthday, which is chocolate cake with cream cheese icing. Now you'll see that this cake is rich and moist and super chocolatey. There's actually a secret ingredient in this cake that I'll show you a bit later in the video that enhances the flavor of the chocolate. Now this recipe is a one bowl cake. You can just make everything in one bowl, and that's what's so great about it. It's just so easy to make. You'll never use a box cake again. Now the first thing you want to do is preheat your oven to 350 degrees. Now, since we're going to be making this cake all in one bowl, I'm just going to use the bowl of my electric mixer here. So go ahead and put 2 cups of flour inside your bowl. Now I'm going to go ahead and measure out 2 cups of sugar. So the chocolate flavor is going to come from 3/4 cups of unsweetened cocoa powder. The better quality your cocoa powder is, the better flavor you're gonna have in your chocolate cake. But if you just have regular cocoa powder, just go ahead and use that. Next, we're gonna add 2 teaspoons of baking powder. 1, 2, and 1.5 teaspoons of baking soda. And now for the secret ingredient. This is espresso powder. Now, whenever you add espresso or coffee to chocolate, it actually enhances the chocolate flavor. So I like to buy instant espresso powder, and I'll add this to any chocolate dessert I'm making, and you're gonna see a huge difference in that chocolate flavor. Okay, so to the bowl, I'm gonna add 1 teaspoon of espresso powder. Now I'm gonna take a whisk and just whisk all my dry ingredients to make sure that they're nice and well incorporated. Now to this dry batter, I'm gonna go ahead and add 1 cup of milk. Now if you wanna make it dairy-free or vegan, you can go ahead and substitute the milk for non-dairy milk like almond milk or coconut milk. So 1 cup of milk. We're also gonna need 1/2 cup of vegetable oil. Now I've already made this recipe with coconut oil and it works just as well. It changes the consistency a little bit of the cake, but it tastes just as good. So if you prefer coconut oil, that's fine too. So that's 1/2 cup of vegetable oil, 2 large eggs, 1, 2, and finally, 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. So the vanilla extract too, if you're using pure vanilla extract, you're gonna see a really big difference in the flavor of the vanilla. Now I made this cake with 2 eggs, but if you want a vegan alternative, you can totally replace those 2 eggs either with egg replacer or 2/3 of a cup of applesauce. Both work really well in this cake and you won't even tell the difference. Okay, so now we're gonna close this and mix this on medium speed just until it's well combined. Now before this next step, I like to scrape down my bowl just to make sure that there's no flour stuck at the bottom of the bowl. So there's actually a secret to making this cake super light and fluffy and moist. We're actually gonna go ahead and add 1 cup of boiling hot water. Now this will activate the baking soda and the baking powder that we put into the batter, and it'll make bubbles in the cake and it'll make it like expand. And that's the secret to making this cake so delicious. So now on low, we're gonna add 1 cup of boiling water. You definitely want to scrape the bowl down once more because a lot of the thicker batter is going to be stuck at the bottom and on the sides of the bowl. So just go get that thick batter that's stuck there, lift it up, mix it one last time. Perfect. Now this cake batter is super liquidy and that's normal, so don't freak out. It's supposed to look like that. So I went ahead and just greased my 9-inch cake pans. Now, instead of using flour to ensure that the cake doesn't stick to the bottom, I'll just be using a bit of cocoa here. And the only reason I'm using the cocoa instead of flour is so that it doesn't give me that kind of white kind of film on the outside of my cake. There you go. So now I prepared both my cake pans and now nothing's gonna stick to the bottom of this. Okay, so let's just remove the paddle attachment, put it in the sink. And we're gonna pour equal amounts into each pan. Like so. I just do this by eye. There you go. Now, one last thing that I like to do, I just come and I just hit it a few times on the counter to get rid of a couple of big air bubbles that might be in the cake. So this goes into the oven for about 30 to 35 minutes or until you just tap it lightly and it bounces back. So let's get these babies in the oven. Okay, so I pulled out my cakes and they've been cooling for about 10 minutes. Now I'm just gonna run a knife along the edge to make sure it doesn't stick. And we'll flip it out and see what it gives us. Now, since the party is tomorrow, I'm actually gonna let these cool completely, wrap them in saran wrap, and tomorrow I'll ice them when I have a bit of time. Okay, for the cream cheese icing, it's a super simple recipe, and you can use this cream cheese icing on almost any cake, like carrot cake or a lemon cake, or it could be even really good with like some kind of brownie. So the first step is that you're gonna need 8 ounces of cream cheese softened. So this is room temperature, and basically I cut it into small cubes and just left it on my counter for half an hour, and that softens the cream cheese pretty well. Now that's about 250 grams of cream cheese if you're living in Canada and you need the conversion. Then you'll also need 1 stick of butter, so that's 8 tablespoons of butter. Unsalted, also at room temperature. So you want to soften the cream cheese and the butter together and make sure that it's nice and whipped. So we're going to go ahead and put this on medium high and just make sure that the butter incorporates with that cream cheese really well. Okay, so that's incorporated pretty well. Let's just scrape down the bowl. And you want to make sure that your cream cheese is lump-free. So I'm just going to do this one more time. Perfect. So now my cream cheese is all nice and smooth, and you can tell that there's no lumps in it. It gives you a nice whipped texture. So that's what you want. And now we're going to add 1 teaspoon of vanilla. The vanilla will add a nice flavor to the cream cheese, and it'll make it smell really good. To this, we're gonna add 1 cup of confectioner's sugar. So, just using a half cup here. And we're gonna beat this on medium high to make sure that the sugar gets incorporated into that cream cheese. Now we got this smooth, silky icing that's gonna be super delicious with the chocolate cake. It's gonna give it a nice tanginess. I just wanna mention that if you wanna make a dairy-free cream cheese icing, you can totally do that using dairy-free cream cheese like Daya. I've already used Daya in the past and it's really come out good. And a dairy-free margarine like Earth Balance. Alright, so my next step was to take just a little bit of the cream cheese icing and put it in a small bowl. And what we're going to do is we're going to cut the top off one of these layers to make sure that it's nice and flat. Now what I like to do is I like to flatten my bottom layer and make sure it's nice and flat. That looks good. And then the top layer, I actually don't mind if there's a little bump. Now, if you do mind that, you can totally cut both slices. I find that this is a homemade cake. It doesn't have to look perfect. We're gonna start with the bottom layer first. Before we lay our cake onto the platter, I like to use some parchment paper here. I put 4 edges of the parchment paper like this, so that while I'm icing it, if there's any crumbs or if there's any fallout from the icing, it won't stain or make the platter ugly. Okay, so I'm gonna start with a nice little dollop of icing just on the bottom of my platter here, just so the cake has something to stick to. So we're gonna take my bottom layer here and I'm gonna go flip it upside down to make sure I have a nice flat surface for the middle, like that. Now, because this cake is dark, it's chocolate, the crumbs in the white cream cheese icing will show enormously. So what we're gonna do is really put a nice thin layer on the whole cake, refrigerate it for like 15 to 20 minutes to make sure that that icing sets with the crumbs stuck in it. And then we'll go ahead and cover the cake with the rest of the icing. That way it gives you a nice smooth finish without any crumbs in it. So for the middle, we're gonna wanna come and put a nice big amount of that cream cheese icing. We're gonna just spread it evenly with my spatula here. Then we're gonna come and put our top layer on top. There you go. And with my spatula, I'm gonna come and do a really nice thin layer of icing, making sure I trap all those crumbs in that first layer. Okay, so now all we have to do is refrigerate this, wait for the icing to set, and then we can finish icing the cake with the leftover icing. Okay, so I just took this out of the fridge and you can tell that the icing has set nicely now. So we're just gonna grab my spatula here. There's a couple ways you can do this. You can either put all of the icing on the top and then push it onto the side, or you can do the top and then the sides separately. Personally, I like to dump all my icing on the top. Now it might look like a lot of icing, but you actually need quite a lot of icing to cover the whole cake. And if you really like it heavy on icing, your cake, you can definitely double up the recipe for the cream cheese icing. So now with my spatula, I'm just gonna come and evenly push it all over the cake. So I'm gonna push a whole bunch of icing all the way to the sides of the cake. Now with my spatula, I'm gonna come and push the icing down over the edge. Spinning my cake platter, and I go and cover all the sides. Using that excess icing that fell over the edge. And there you go. Now we're just gonna come and remove the parchment paper to make a nice clean finish on my plate. So there you have it, a rich, moist chocolatey cake covered with cream cheese icing. Let me know what you think of the cake in the comments down below, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you next time. Bye.